to Taking the Myth, your topical discussion show. I'm Stephen Nye, and joining me is the excellent Iram of Ramzan. Iram, how are you doing?
Currently roasting in my attic room right now. How about you?
Yep, same. What is hot for a Brit? That's the thing though, isn't it?
I really cannot handle hot weather.
I think we do better being waterboarded.
Yeah, we really do. So, if we were to be tortured in that way, I think we'd nail it, to be honest with you.
Growing up in Manchester, waterboarding is the natural state, really, isn't it? You are in various degrees of rain-based drowning, so yeah, as George Bush likes to say, it's not really torture, is it?
Certainly not for us Northerners. Definitely, it's not. So if I ever were to be picked up by Mossad or Al Qaeda or whoever, I just pray that they waterboard me.
Joking aside, obviously waterboarding is torture and deeply unethical. Did you ever see the late, great Christopher Hitchens, peace be upon him, volunteer to go through the process? That was fascinating. Yes.
I know, yeah. I don't know why on earth anyone would volunteer for that. I mean, as far as I'm aware, he didn't grow up in Manchester, so what was he thinking?
Exactly. That's it. He was ill-equipped. He was unprepared.
If only he'd met us at that time.
He'd not put in the hours.
Would have given him tips. No.
So I saw a picture of you is it a G? Are you doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? What's going on?
Oh my God, yeah. So I thought to myself, I have all this pent-up rage and anger. But apart from ranting on this podcast, how else can I unleash?
It's just therapy for you, isn't it, this podcast, basically?
It is. It's so good, and not to put down this podcast, but I thought words
couldn't get
me so far. Yeah, words can only do so much. I mean, I thought verbally I'm just kicking ass, but I need to actually physically do it. So started taking not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I started doing Krav Maga as well, because obviously I'm paid by Mossad, so I need to be trained in the dark arts of the Zionists. So yeah, I started doing that not that long ago, and I've already got my kick-ass Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu outfit.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's great. It fascinates me. It's one of these things that it's the great leveler, really. It's fairly defensive as a tactic, but it's almost like chess, and it can help somebody who's half the size of somebody else completely and totally subdue them and get the better of them. I think 9 times out of 10 when you get in a kind of a physical confrontation, it ends with a couple of shoves and then you're both rolling around on the floor. So it's when you both go to floor that the magic of BJJ really kicks in, I believe. It's something I've been interested in. I've signed up a few times and then not done it because I've slipped discs in my lumbar. I know. So I think I might have to do it, Iram. We can spar together.
Oh my God. My money is on me.
Whatever.
It is quite cool. Although, I mean,
I'm not above choking out a beige girl. I'll put that up front right now.
That is racist, and if you do that, I will sue.
It's a hate crime, really.
It's a hate crime, yeah. I mean, you say it's a great leveler, but God, I actually had a 90 kg woman who was just, oh my God, I did not know how on earth to get her off me. I swear I thought I was gonna die. So but yeah, it's really, I'm actually really enjoying it, to be quite honest with you. I've always wanted to take up a martial art, and I just never did it, and I wish I had done, because it's much easier when you're a lot younger to get into that habit of doing it, as opposed to when you're older. You have work, you have all these other things going on in your life, but hey ho, I'm doing it, and I'm having a lot of fun, and I thought I looked pretty snazzy as well, because it's all about the outfit.
Well, good luck to you. You'll have to let us know how you progress on that. Now, there's something I want to talk about. There's something we have talked about extensively on this podcast. We recorded multiple episodes on this in 2018 when it actually happened. Nothing's changed since those comments we made. We were bang on the money. We understood the situation perfectly, it seemed, not meaning to blow our own trumpets, but I will actually, Iram, I will be the conductor in the concerto of trumpet blowing right now, because our commentary on this was spot on, and this was the Tommy Robinson in contempt of court thing, which I have to say now, I think his fans and his camp are actually really putting their back into misunderstanding the situation or misrepresenting it. I don't know if it's a general IQ issue or it is a concerted effort to just lie, basically. So we said in 2018, as soon as we saw this live stream outside the court, you're a real journalist, I'm a pretend one. I've had a little bit of training, you've had a lot of training. We saw this and we said, well, that's contempt of court. And we outlined all the reasons it was contempt of court. And we said, this boy's going to jail. That's what happens. It's the law. It's that much of a flagrant disregard of the contempt of court laws that I suggested that it'll probably get used as a case study in future textbooks and manuals and academia. Tommy Robinson will be the go-to case study in McNay's essential law for journalists when the next issue comes out. I guarantee it. I will put cash money on it that he will be the contempt of court case study. Do you have anything to add to this shambles of a situation?
Yeah, it just goes to show you that our establishment is firmly against the working class and demonising those who are exposing grooming gangs that they don't want you to know about.
Yeah, before we started recording, I said, you know what, I'll probably only take 5 minutes on this because everything we've said about it, we said in 2018, it still stands. If people are wondering what we think about this, they can go and listen to that. And I said to you, just be careful I don't go on a 20-minute rant. Well, here we go. So
it's all right. I'll go on a bloody rant. I mean, he sentenced to what, 9 months imprisonment? I think the maximum is 2 years.
2 years and an unlimited fine. They took into account time served for his last appeal. He got off. They're saying he's been persecuted. Oh, I'm off again. First of all, there's some really easy arguments to dismantle, but they seem quite prominent amongst his propaganda machine and his camp. The first one is he's been jailed for exposing rape gangs, grooming gangs, sometimes referred to as Asian grooming gangs, the Muslim Pakistani men, basically. That's what the media's not talking honestly about this. I agree. That he's saying, and his camp's saying, that's what he's been persecuted for. He's exposing a problem, he's exposing an issue, he's exposing the cover-ups. Now,
this is ridiculous. He's not exposed anything. The grooming gangs were, they, first of all, when people did notice there was an issue, it was the likes of the MP Anne Cryer, a Labour MP in Keighley. She was vilified for it when she said it, and then the BNP kind of took advantage of that because they were also talking about these grooming gangs, but nobody wanted to listen because obviously it's the BNP and, you don't really want to take what they say seriously. And so they were able to capitalise on that. Yes, they were able to capitalise on that and, they won a seat in Keighley because of that. And then, you had the Times journalist Andrew Norfolk who wrote this massive expose for the newspaper about it. And even at the time, I remember, people were very, very defensive. Why are you writing about this? You're saying all Asian men are this, all Pakistani men are this. Nobody was saying that, but this was happening. And then it turned out it wasn't just happening in Rotherham, it was happening in Oxford, Derbyshire, Rochdale, just about, every single part of England had seen this disgusting phenomenon. So Tommy Robinson was not exposing anything. He was talking about it a lot, which is fine, but he did not expose anything. And contrary to what Katie Hopkins said, he wasn't convicted of journalism.
Oh, wait, this is the other one they're going with now. Convicted of causing anxiety to Muslim rapists, which is just insane. So there's a couple of things I just want to say about this. First of all, the argument is that he's been persecuted for exposing something, but then in court, he claims that all he was doing was reading out information that was published on the BBC. So either the mainstream media aren't exposing it and he is, or he's just reading out what the mainstream media has reported.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It has to have been exposing the mainstream media for him to have been reading it out.
Exactly. And then, when he was finally sentenced, there were some people on Twitter saying, oh, but, he didn't know what he was doing. Well, first of all, he actually did, because on camera he said... he said plainly, oh, there are reporting restrictions in place. So he knew there were reporting restrictions. And
not
you
only
know
that,
shut your mouth. And then also, that wasn't to you, that was to these Twitter fans, by the way. That wasn't an instruction. And then not only that, it doesn't matter on your intent. The law on contempt says anybody who's causing substantial risk of serious prejudice will be in contempt.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you intend for it to happen or not, whether it's your intention.
It's not just that. Even if
prejudice.
They're saying this as well. Well, he didn't prejudice the trial. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's not what the law is. If you, like you just mentioned plainly, if you cause any risk to this trial by your actions, that's contempt of court.
Yeah.
I'm going out there and saying he's jeopardised these trials. He's jeopardised these trials. And it did come very close, by the way. The legal team of the rapist on trial actually tried to get the trial thrown out. They actually pushed for it and mentioned what Tommy Robinson had done to do it, and the court luckily said we've got no reason to believe that the jury's been affected here or the trial's been affected, but that was pure luck. My example to this was like, imagine being on a motorway bridge and throwing bricks off the top of it, and just by pure luck you don't hit a car, and when you get arrested and hauled in front of the court, you say, well, I shouldn't be in trouble here because one, I didn't hit the cars, and two, people use this bridge all the time, why are they not getting in trouble? That's exactly the kind of defence that Tommy Robinson put up.
Well, he kept changing his story as well.
He's full of shit.
His account was, he would say one thing and then he would actually go back on it the next. So he knew what he was doing. I mean, fair enough. There's a debate to be had whether juries are actually affected by media reports. That's a
fine debate. If somebody wants to talk about reformation of the contempt of court laws with me and why it's better to do it this way or that way, I will hear that. What I won't hear is that he did nothing wrong and he's been persecuted. No, he got treated the way anyone would get treated. The second I saw that video, I knew exactly what had happened, and it's not just because of him. It would have happened to anyone. And not only did he fought it all the way, firing off misinformation left, right and centre. His team, which we need to get to, his little gaggle of propagandist cunts that circle him, that Ezra Levant and everyone at Rebel Media. I was reading the transcripts of the reports from the court from 3 different journalists, 3 different sources, and everything they said corroborated. Then I went to look at the Ezra Levant commentary, how he'd summarised what was said in court, and it was nothing like what was being said. And I genuinely feel only a little bit sorry for the Tommy Robinson fans who've paid into this appeal and donated money towards him and are so convinced he's this British lion who's been, oppressed by the state, because they're pumping that message out constantly. And if you don't have time to look into this properly, or you don't quite understand the legal parameters of this, you may be taken in by it. So I don't know what else to say about this apart from this is what happens. I wasn't too bothered about him going back to jail. I don't care. If they hadn't given him a jail sentence, I wouldn't have protested, I wouldn't have objected, I would have gone fine. I don't hate Tommy Robinson, but the way he spins things has made me doubt everything about him. So if you read his autobiography, Enemy of the State, it goes through all the times he's been in trouble with the police. And lo and behold, it's never his fault. There's always a reason why he's been treated unfairly by the police, and he spins his story. Now, if you was to accept on face value what he's saying in that book, he is probably the most persecuted man in Britain, but we're only getting his side of the story, right? So I was always very sceptical, but willing to give him the benefit of the doubt to the point where I'd grant it might be possible, right? This time, I've seen both sides of the story play out in real time. So I've had my own knowledge to back it up. In terms of contempt of law, I understand what that is. I understand what it means if you transgress it. So I've got the first-hand knowledge there. I've got to read everything that's gone on in the courts, and I've got to hear the way Tommy Robinson spins it. And it's the way he's spun this and the way his team spun this has just made me doubt anything he's ever said about his run-ins with the police. And I don't think he can be trusted. I don't think he can be relied upon to be an objective source on anything. And this is a shame because I'm not some far-left loony who says he's a far-right thug, he's a neo-Nazi, he's a racist white supremacist. All that's fucking left-wing lunacy thrown up to avoid talking about the real issue, which is the problem we have with Islam, right? I agree with Tommy on Islam, which is probably the most controversial thing about him, his views on Islam. But I won't put up with a fucking criminal liar. That's where I have to draw the line. So he's become indefensible to me, and even though people have said to me, like, you're only doing this now so you can draw a line between you and Tommy Robinson to have an easy life. Nope. If when he's out of prison and he starts getting in trouble unfairly, I will defend him. If he gets banned from a platform again, I'll defend him like I did last time. If someone assaults him in the street like they have been doing with milkshakes or throwing rocks at demonstrations, I will defend Tommy Robinson, and then I'll get called a white supremacist again. Look forward to that. I actually missed that a little bit at the minute. Rant done here, Ram.
And breathe.
Whew.
Does that feel better?
Yes. I don't see. He's not even going to serve the full 9 months. He'll be out in half of that anyway.
Yeah.
And the judge did note, like, she can't even be lenient with him because he's not apologised or admitted guilt. If he'd have said, "I'm really sorry, it won't happen again," I think this story would have been very different.
But he can't. It wasn't possible for him to apologise because he doesn't think he's done anything wrong.
I'm not
if he
sure.
had done that, he would have had to admit it. No, he doesn't. He doesn't think he's done anything.
Then it's pathological. His lies are pathological at this point.
Yeah,
he's not an idiot.
It's a clear sign of a narcissist, I think, that someone who never thinks they're wrong, always blames everybody else for what goes wrong in their lives. I think that's indicative of a narcissistic personality. I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like to me.
This is such a fucking shame to me because a while back when he left the EDL and he started speaking in more sensible tones and he worked with Quilliam, or so it seemed on the outside of it. There's a little bit more to that we've since found out. It just seemed like this could be a great story of somebody who was kind of a hate figure in the UK, a young leader of one of the most controversial protest movements that fell into disarray, neo-Nazi elements, things like that. And he's come through the other side to be a more sensible advocate for anti-extremism, a credible voice. People do this all the time. People reform. People go from an extreme view, extreme rhetoric, and they grow and they censor it. The activists are filled with people who are at one end of the extreme ones and found a more sensible place, and that experience of the extremes actually helps them in their activism. And I thought for a moment that Tommy had just managed to fall into that bracket, and no, he's blown it for me. So I don't know what's going to come next, but his fans don't seem to realise at this point he is a liability to whatever cause you have, whether it's anti-immigration, whether it's anti-Islam, whether it's free speech. Tommy Robinson is a liability to your cause. Nobody is going to listen to you or take you seriously, and it's because of his reputation, and it's his fault his reputation is this bad. At this point, there's nobody else to blame but himself.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, we have seen some instances where people have, they've transformed their worldview. They're on the far right and now they're not. So there's a guy called, I think, is it Ivan Humble on Twitter? I don't know if you've ever come across him, but I think he was in the EDL. He used to be very, very anti-Muslim. He had some horrible views, and thanks to some work done by good activists, he met with Muslims, he met with groups that helped change his worldview, and he's a more well-rounded person now, and has distanced himself from his past views. And that could have been done with Robinson, but Stephen Yaxley.
Stephen Yaxley Lennon.
Call him by his real name.
I'm fucking sick of that.
I hate it when people say that. Oh, let's call him by his real name, as though it's just this one big secret.
No. Let's call him by the name everyone knows him by, so that they know I'm talking about him. Let's make sure we can communicate our message to the broadest audience by using the most known thing about him, his name. I don't have to see who's Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Oh, it's Tommy Robinson. Oh, I know who Tommy Robinson is. Why don't you just fucking say Tommy Robinson then? You know what I mean? What is the point? And he's not even hiding it. One thing I did want to talk about, which has been interesting for a number of reasons, is Pride in London this last weekend.
I missed Pride because I'm like a massive homophobe in it.
Yeah, bare gays there. A lot of gays.
Well, to be fair, I was actually working. I've never really been to any Pride events.
I'm not a fan.
I don't know. I've never been to any events, and I hate it when there's always parades going on because it just gets so busy and ram-packed. So
yeah, well, I can speak.
I would rain on your parade.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've always said. Right, for me, it is a fantastic thing about Great Britain now that LGBT people and that message can have a fucking parade. It's a celebration. That's what it is. It's a celebration, which is a great thing. It just doesn't really interest me in terms of activism. I think the gay rights movement, I think it's done its best work in this country, to be honest. And it's more of a celebration now, which is perfectly fine. I still think it's a little bit cynical. I mean, I was there and you had the MCs and the like, and give it up for Goldman Sachs, and give it up for Walt Disney, or all the companies there. And I'm kind of thinking, where were you guys banging the drum for gay pride when they were being persecuted, when it was legal, when it would have meant something for you to stick your neck on the block. But now it's a good business decision now.
It is. Have you noticed how all these businesses have now been changing their logo to have the rainbow? I'm sorry, but I think that's really, really fucking annoying.
It's cynical.
I think it's cynical. It's gesture politics.
Yeah.
It's
Virtue signaling, yeah, which is fine.
It's virtue signaling. I mean, obviously, it's great if they support gay rights, but I think first of all,
We support gay rights if it's profitable.
I think it's really. I don't think it's in. I don't think it should be in the remit of a bank or the police to, change their logo and have the rainbow flag.
That's the thing, though, because if they don't now, they get the left-wing pressure. Why aren't you supporting Pride? Why are you homophobes? And I think it's perfectly valid to not stay. You see, this sounds bad when you say I'm staying neutral on the Pride thing. It seems like you're thinking it's up for debate whether or not gays should have rights, and that's not what you're saying. They're saying basically my relationship to the general public is to sell them goods they want, find useful, and can afford. That's as far as my responsibilities go.
Yeah, but you're a bank. What do you have to do with LGBT rights unless you, I don't know, unless you've made a gay mortgage or something? I don't know.
A gay mortgage?
I don't know. Do you know what I mean? What I mean is like, have they done something specific to say, gay?
We have the gayest mortgages.
I think. I don't know if I'm explaining.
I know what you're
right,
saying. It's not relevant to the goods and services, is it?
It's not.
It's a purely cynical business decision. They know it makes them look good and appeals to people, so that they can make more money. It's an exploitation of the pink pound.
There was this video of I don't know where it was. I think it might have been Birmingham when they had their Pride, and there's these officers going around and blowing whistles, and they had rainbow badges on. And
Are you sure they weren't just strippers? It gets a little bit confusing when you throw the police uniform into the mix.
Oh, do you know what? No, I think they actually were. Do you know what? Now that you said that,
was he called Officer Dong? Constable Queef.
That one. But the thing is, I think they were real officers, and then there were some people on Twitter saying, this is why police officers are seen as a bit of a joke. Should they be out there solving crimes?
Yeah, they painted a police car in the rainbow flags once and put it on Twitter, and everyone was like, "Why are you spending money on this?"
Can you imagine being openly gay in the police force? I doubt that it's still seen as acceptable even now. I mean, this is a very, very macho organisation still, so
maybe.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason, so I've just slagged off Pride there, and I've said this before, but I was there.
Oh, I'm not slagging off Pride at all. I just think if you're going to put the Pride colours up on your business logo, at least do it because you've actually done something.
Yes.
In the fight for gay rights, like for example. Okay, I can't think of an
you've opened a gay mortgage scheme.
No, but you know what I mean. If unless you've actually done something, to help gay people, then I don't really see why you're doing that. It just seems like it's another trend to get on board with, like I don't know, when supermarkets say Happy Ramadan and start start selling staples, staple items during Ramadan, which are a lot cheaper in your Muslim grocery shop or something. But yeah.
Well, I turned up and I went, and the only reason I had any interest in this event is because ex-Muslims had a presence there. The Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain had a presence there, and they were marching with placards, and I wanted to report on it. So I reached out to them, and they very kindly invited me to come along and film it. And I did film it, and I uploaded it to YouTube, and it's a wonderful celebration. And what was really, really heartwarming for me personally was to see the wonderful reception they got from the audience and the crowds. They were walking around with signs saying things like Allah is gay, which we'll touch on in a moment. They were walking around with signs saying make love, not Sharia. other signs saying less Islam, more orgasms. They was highlighting, big banners highlighting the several states for which homosexuality is punishable by death, all Islamic, of course. And the crowd was absolutely loving it. It probably had something to do with the fact that the girls on the march were naked as well. They had, they were bare-chested, but they had like body paint on. I think that's probably how they get around certain public nudity laws. They had imam outfits on, like imam hats with stuff that said Imam Haram on it. Another one.
My name?
Yeah, Imam Haram.
That is actually, that's like my Tinder bio.
Well, one of the other girls had one that said Imam Vice on it, and I kind of said she missed a trick by not having Imami Vice on there, but
I was just gonna say that.
It was the easy joke. So this was a wonderful event. I covered it all. It's on my YouTube channel now, youtube.com/gspellchecker. But it kicked off a little bit for me personally, and I kind of expected it would. And here's what happened. So at the event that I was filming, at one point the group of girls holding the Al Aris gay sign who were marching noticed somebody in the crowd that had a sign that said Jesus is queer. So they ran over and I followed them and I took a photograph of them and various other photographs holding these signs, and I put them on Twitter. And then I went to bed in that evening, woke up in the morning to just a torrent of Islamist abuse and the occasional threat. I had.
I'm sorry, I was drunk.
Yeah.
Can't be held responsible.
So, and then I got notifications from Google saying people were trying to get into my email. Then I got notifications from Twitter saying I need to reset my password. People are trying to get into my Twitter account. Now, this was deeply unpleasant, and it wasn't nice. But it takes a lot to unsettle me. I wasn't, I was like, fuck it, bring it on, and I was arguing with these people. I'm a big believer in you should share the risk. I don't think it's fair to let ex-Muslims go out there and do it alone and not put your face to it. So I made sure that I took a selfie of me in front of one of these signs with one of the girls, because I didn't want to just put it all on their shoulders.
You had a selfie with some topless woman who everyone was asking, is that me?
Yeah, not Iram, just for the record. So I got all this abuse, all these threats, and it didn't bother me. I was like, bring it on. Then all of a sudden, because I actually deleted the pictures in the end, so I wrote a blog on it, but I just want to be very clear about why I delete them off my timeline. I noticed that they were starting trying to get me banned from Twitter then. There was accounts with quite a lot of followers saying report and block this account, report and block this account, and loads of people were doing it and saying they'd done it. And I'm somebody who's had my Twitter account banned several times for doing fuck all. What happens is you get suspended so many times, and then I think there's so many strikes and you're out. And luckily, one of the last times it got reactivated was because the independent newspaper reported on it and drew some attention to it. And I think somebody at Twitter reviewed it, manually. So I got away. I'm on my last life, basically. Now, for me, my Twitter account is where all my traffic comes from my stuff. Whenever I check on my stats for this podcast, whenever I check on my stats for my videos, my blogs, the first referrer, the first place everyone always comes from is Twitter. Not many people subscribe to my YouTube channel. Not many people follow me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It all seems to come from Twitter. So I panicked a little bit. I thought, well, are these images worth losing my Twitter account for, considering I'm about to upload a video on YouTube that has all the same imagery in it, and I can share that on Twitter. My rationale was, if I get banned from Twitter now, I can't share this video. And I don't want people to think it was cowardice, because I kept these pictures up on Instagram, I kept them up on Facebook. I don't care about those platforms. Do you know what I mean? And they can go. As far as I'm concerned, I can get banned from them. I don't care, because I have very little influence on them platforms. But if I was to lose my Twitter account, all of a sudden, I can't share my blogs to wider audiences. This podcast won't get as many listens. Essentially, if I get banned from Twitter, I've gone for a large amount of people who don't bother so just out of this chilling effect on free speech and the bans that Twitter are putting in place for really spurious things, I capitulated. I deleted the images and I got really annoyed with myself for it. But isn't it weird that the thing that worried me more than anything wasn't the Islamist threats? I thought, fuck them. And the low-level threats anyway, the likelihood of some guy from fucking Malaysia following through on his threat to me is very low. But I capitulated to the looming threat of a Twitter ban.
That it's fucking ridiculous. I've seen people come out with homophobic shit on Twitter, racist shit, and they never get banned. Are you fucking serious? I mean, this is very reminiscent of last year when the East London Mosque complained about the ex-Muslim presence at Pride, and they said it was Islamophobic to have
why
a sign saying Allah is gay. So you got to think, well, is what's wrong with being gay? That surely means you think being gay is wrong. And then they said, we've worked with the LGBT community on so many issues. Oh yeah, right. And these are organizations that have done absolutely fuck all for the LGBT communities. There are so many Muslim speakers out there, or imams, who've said disgusting things about homosexuals, and they always follow, they always say, there's nothing wrong with homosexuality, it's the act we condemn, as though that's any better. Just be gay, but don't ever act on it. Just keep it all
be
in
gay,
your head.
just don't do gay.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Be gay, don't do gay. So these organizations couldn't give a fuck about gay rights, and they have the nerve to complain about the ex-Muslim presence. I mean, there are some people who I know who have said that maybe the Council of Ex-Muslims, maybe they're being a bit too provocative.
I agree.
They've held those signs.
I agree.
Was it in bad taste?
I know that's offensive. I know it's going to provoke, but then the question is, well, why is it offensive and why does it provoke? And that's how you get to the truth of the situation. That's where you get to talk about all the ways in which Islam is the antithesis of gay rights. I tweeted out, because a lot of non-Muslims are saying, well, that's too far, that's offensive. So I tweeted out something like, dear non-Muslims who say that the Allah is gay signs are offensive. How do you get to that viewpoint without conceding that Islam is anti-gay? And if so, why would you want to defend that? And I've not heard a good response to that yet. Nobody can really explain why it's offensive without saying, well, it's because Islam's not particularly gay friendly. Another quick thing I wanted to point out as well, and I only found this out after the fact. I don't think it would have affected my decision to report there, but they actually foiled a terror attack on Pride. The police, the two individuals arrested, they were planning a car and knife attack on the Pride parade. Now, I've got very few details on that. I don't know whether they were just wanting to attack gay people or whether or not they got wind of the activities of the Council of Ex-Muslims over recent years and were thinking about attacking them specifically. I don't know what the details were, but they've been arrested. They don't have very British sounding names, Iram, I have to say. They're not John Smiths and Amanda Davies. Do you know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure it is Islamic inspired terror attack. So this is what I'm saying now. I mean, we have the horrible statistics about British Muslims and homosexuality. To reiterate, when people were polled by credible polling institutes, 52% of Muslims think that homosexuality should be illegal. 0% of them say it's acceptable. We have all the hundreds of Muslims in the communities in Birmingham and the West Midlands protesting LGBT lessons outside schools, and we just have this latest terror attack foiled on Pride. And I think the biggest threat to LGBT rights and the way of LGBT lives in this country at the minute comes from an Islamic perspective, and I just don't see far left rainbow waving hashtag LGBT activist it's okay if they can't talk about it or they feel afraid. They simply won't acknowledge it, and that really frustrates me. That you've got this clear and present danger. You've got an enemy in your sights that is open and telling you exactly what they think and why, and you are silent.
What these groups say is they don't want to demonize Muslims because they're our allies, because Islamophobia is rampant in this country, and we should side with our Muslim allies. We don't want to demonize them or alienate them. And yet, from what we've seen in Birmingham, which I really want to come on to now, is the very opposite of that, because those people are not wanting to ally with the LGBT communities whatsoever.
They're explicit. They're even saying things like it's not okay to be gay. It's not okay to teach Muslim children that it's okay to be gay. They're not making the argument. You know, that you could find some really wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed, snake-like way of saying, well, maybe these themes are too grand for children and we should wait till they're a bit older. I don't think it's appropriate at this age. You know, this really annoying shit. But no, they're saying it's against Islam. It's not okay to be gay. Do you know what I mean? That could not be any more on the nose, could it?
I agree with that. And this topic has been very much in the news for since January now. So we've seen protests outside Birmingham because there are schools there that are teaching all about inclusivity and relationships to primary school children. Like we said last week, you know, they're not teaching about bum sex to young kids.
That's still funny.
Simply,
why is that still funny?
I don't know. Just is. And there are, and obviously there are some books that will say, oh, and this child has two mummies, and you know, little Stephen there, no, not the same Stephen, has two daddies. And obviously
I
there
actually
are
do,
mostly,
which is interesting.
Do you?
I have a stepdad, so I refer to him lovingly as my spare dad.
Oh my God! So you have two daddies.
I have two daddies. Yeah.
The parents in Birmingham wouldn't like that. So, and what's happened now is because these protests have been allowed to go on and on, because central government has been too cowardly to act. There's going to be nationwide protests by parents in September, and unfortunately head teachers across England they're just having to brace themselves.
How do you prepare for that? That's what I mean. You made a great point.
I
there.
don't
You should have
know.
nipped this in the bud. The inaction has led to this situation
Exactly.
now where we can't expect the school. How the school's going to deal with this? I really feel sorry for the academic institutions here who are just really struggling to deal with a new issue that's arisen from one particular community in the country. Well, not just one particular community, obviously, because, you know, conservative Christians are jumping on the bandwagon now, which is interesting.
Well, what's happened is the Department for Education said that teaching on relationship is compulsory in primary schools, and sex education will be compulsory in secondary schools. They have to be taught from 2020, but about 1,400 schools said they're going to launch them in September just to get ahead of it and get an early start.
That's fairly common, isn't it?
Yeah,
the new
it is. Yeah. And what happened was, in Birmingham, the No Outsiders program was being taught to kids at Parkfield Primary School, and that's basically all about teaching children equality. So from year 1 to year 6 there, you know, they read certain books, which I have looked at, and they are absolutely age appropriate. I mean, they teach about fucking Elmer to 5-year-old kids.
What, they're teaching about fucking Elmer?
Yeah.
That is
No.
Very inappropriate.
Let me rephrase that. They fucking teach about Elmer. So they'll read the book like Elmer to 5-year-old kids. I mean, what has that elephant ever done to anybody, I ask you?
You know what? You know, there's a little element of this as well, which I think might have caused a little bit of apathy to the situation. So, and my alarm bells went off a little bit when I first read the headlines, and they said they were teaching about LGBT to young kids. My first question.
See, that's the problem. That's the problem.
But it wasn't.
It's just lazy. It's just lazy headlines, because they're not teaching about LGBT people as such.
Yeah.
It's just one aspect of it where there'll be a book that'll say, you know, this child comes from a family where there's two mummies instead of a mummy and a daddy. And there's two penguins that are male and they hatch an egg. That's it.
Yeah,
it's not LGBT teaching. It's just a bit of a lazy way of saying it. And so I think what's happened is some people who didn't have strong views either way were asking, what exactly does that mean, LGBT teaching? You know, isn't that a bit young for children of that age?
I think there's another element here. I mean, so you're quite right in what you're saying is it's teaching basically that there are certain dynamics within the family and the community which don't match certain traditional norms of the, you know, mummy and daddy family dynamic. You know, it's just letting people know that there are differences within that dynamic, and that's fine. So people don't get ostracized. So little Timmy, who's living in a single parent household, isn't looked upon any less than a child, less than a child with a mum and dad, and vice versa. Anyone who's got gay parents or what have you. It's just saying that the family dynamic that was propagated from the 50s onwards is not what it is anymore. I mean, I'm a product of this. My parents divorced when I was 6 years old. I've spent my entire life going between parents. I've had step parents come in and out of my life at different times, and I personally feel like that's enriched me a little bit. I think I'm better for it. I've been lucky to have decent people like that come in and out of my life, and that would typically be considered an unconventional family dynamic. My second point was it's not just that I think people may have thought that they were teaching about sex in school. I think what's happened is the far left have kind of shot themselves in the foot here a little bit when we see some of the lunacy they're teaching on campuses in terms of gender studies and sociology.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right in that, because I've noticed whenever I've written about this, and there are people in the comments who say, I'm absolutely for the whole, gay rights and everything, but then this transgender stuff and gender neutrality and having toilets where men can identify, that's kind of got my back up a little bit, and I can see where they're coming from, that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
On this at all.
This is what happens when you muddy the water on these issues. People have come to think of these things as just left-wing lunacy, where they make up things and throw science in the bin about gender.
But you know what's going on? There are activists up and down this country that are deliberately muddying the waters. Parents have been consulted about this issue on so many times. They've been told what's going to be in the curriculum, what books are going to be taught. There was a Guardian piece that was done about this in 2016, for crying out loud, where they had a group of Muslim women who were in class, and their children were going to be reading these books, and they were saying, well, I know my religion says this about homosexuality, but at the end of the day, this is a reality in Britain, and I'd rather my child learn about this in a safe environment in school than just learn about something, some weird things outside of class where we don't know what they'll be learning about. So parents have absolutely been consulted, and there are some out there who seem to think that parental consultation means they get to dictate what goes on the curriculum. That is absolutely not how consultation works. And there are activists up and down this country that are, they are blatantly homophobic. And you know what? And people have shared these messages with me as well. They're all doing it on WhatsApp. They don't even want their child learning sex education even in secondary school. So they keep going on about how it's not age appropriate. And you think to yourself, well, is it age appropriate to learn about puberty when you're 15, when you've already fucking gone through puberty? No. Oh, okay. So you just basically want to hide your child away from the world and not have him or her learn about what's going on to their bodies. I mean, these children are going to go through life being so confused, and puberty is a very confusing time, and you don't know what the hell's happening to your body. And then on top of that, the school wants to tell you what's happening to you, and your parents saying, nope, not going to happen. Their parents are not going to teach them that. Conservative parents don't teach their children these things. So where else are they going to learn it apart from school?
Yeah.
Because, otherwise they'll just go online and God knows what they'll learn there.
Good luck with your STDs and your underage pregnancies, is all I've got to say about that as well. Is there anything else at all you wanted to add to this topic?
Well, I think it's crucial that these lessons do happen, because, I think it was just quite recently we heard Israel's education minister, Rabbi Rafi Peretz, I think he's called. He spoke out recently in support for these so-called conversion therapies for gay people. And you just got to think to yourself, it's 2019. How do you think that it's okay to try and give people, tell people to have something like that so that they can change who they are? It's not like sending them to Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that. It's, you can't change who you're attracted to. You can't just suddenly wake up and decide, yeah, do you know what? I don't fancy a bit of cock anymore.
If anyone who really is an advocate for gay conversion therapy and believes in its efficacy, I think they should volunteer to be gay. Have it reversed. Surely it can be reversed. And then say, look, I'm queer. I'm getting my gay mortgage. And then they can volunteer to have it reversed again. Because if it works and it's a surefire, bona fide medical process, surely they should be able to demonstrate it. I actually interviewed Dr. Christian Jessen on this podcast about gay conversion therapy. He did an amazing documentary on this called...
Is he that really fit doctor?
Looks like he's carved out of marble, blonde hair. That dude?
Yeah.
Yes, that guy
Yeah.
then. He did an amazing documentary on this called Cure Me, I'm Gay, where he basically explained a lot of these quote-unquote gay conversion therapies that were available on the NHS up until a ridiculously late period in time. And he actually volunteered himself to go through a few of them on the show, and it was just fascinating to see some of the things that they put people through. And you've got
Like what?
Oh, there was kind of like aversion therapy as well. So they would do...
Did they have to get a mortgage first?
They had to get a mortgage. They had to get straight mortgage, basically, and that was it. That's enough to put anyone off sex with dudes. So they do something called aversion therapy. So they gave him a poison, basically, something that would make him violently sick, convulse with vomit. But at the same time, they'd show him pictures of naked men. So the idea was that he'd create a negative association between the naked male form and the obviously vomiting. It's quite common in psychology to like Pavlovian conditioning kind of thing. It's quite a common process. So that was horrendous as well.
I think I need something like that, to associate chocolate or cake with being sick, so I just never binge on them ever again.
They do.
Do they not work though?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, so I you know what you should do? So I used to, when I was a bit younger, when I first got a smartphone and I realised you could use a song that you liked as your wake-up call on your alarm, I chose songs that I liked. And then what happened is...
You liked waking up. You liked being awake. Now you hate going to sleep.
No, so now I hate that song because it reminds me of being woken up. It reminds me of being disturbed from a peaceful slumber. And it's really funny because there's one track I always used to use, and if I hear that somewhere now, it gives me a little moment of anxiety because it's abruptly woke me up from sleep. So I just go with the standard alarm clock now. So what you need for your cake problem is you need a cake on your bedside table, and as soon as your alarm goes off, before you've had a chance to do anything, you've got to take a quick mouthful of cake. As soon as your alarm goes off, mouthful of cake.
I don't think that's gonna work. I think that'll just make me eat more cake.
Just make you fat. but the idea is you'll create a negative association. You'll then associate cake with having to wake up, which is something none of us generally enjoy. So yeah, that's what they used to do. With gay people, electroshock therapy, all sorts of horrible, inhumane, baseless, ineffective nonsense as well. So I was really appreciative of the fact that he'd made this and kind of shine a light on this dark history our country has on this thing, because I'm not talking like the 1920s here. It was very recent history. There are people who are alive now that would have undergone a lot of these treatments.
So does it actually... I mean, are there people out there who have reportedly said that it worked?
Yeah, there are people who say they have come through the other side with gay conversion therapy. The born again evangelicals.
Were they even properly gay in the first place? Maybe they were just bi. What happens is they are gay, and then a couple of months down the line, they're found in a cheap motel on the knees with some rent boy, and the lies exposed. It's happened numerous times with people who've been the face for poster child for. Gay. I mean, what is this whole in and out group thing as well? Imagine your entire community is an evangelical church and you've been convinced it is an illness. And there is something wrong when you've bought into this and you convince yourself that you are ill and that you've gotten over it, or you can somehow suppress your true nature and identity. I can imagine it just being it's so easy being straight, really, if you think about it. Imagine, I knew when I was very young that I was attracted to girls. Even before even pre-puberty, I knew straight away that the girls is what I liked, right? But imagine the entirety of society was telling me that I was ill,
and it was abnormal and there was something wrong with me, you're going to get some horribly abnormal psychological effects from that. And it doesn't surprise me that people do act in erratic ways. They say that they've been cured or whatever, or they convince themselves that they have, or they live a lie for a while. You hear about men who have, children and long-term marriages and then come out the closet at 45, and it's just all these conflicting psychological states competing with each other. And I think that's why you get people who claim to have been cured with gay conversion therapy.
Yeah, but I mean, if you tell them they can get a gay mortgage, they won't let go for the
I might just, if I can get a reduction on my mortgage, I might just pretend to be gay.
But the thing is, I can't believe people seriously think it's a choice to actually be gay or be attracted to men. It would just, I mean, it's just ridiculous. You can't help who you're attracted to.
Well, here's what I'm worried about this. I felt that this country had put those arguments to bed. Those really unsophisticated, horrible arguments like if it's your choice, it's what you choose to do kind of thing. But they've been brought back to the public consciousness again because of the conservative Muslim community being 45 years behind British social norms now. And notice how I said British conservative Muslims. Yeah. That's very specific with my narrow criteria. Not all. Yeah. Not all, Iram. Not all.
Hashtag.
Not all.
No, but the thing is, even if it were a choice to be gay, which obviously it's not. So
what? What's the problem?
We live in a free society where we do have that choice. But also, I just want to point out, unfortunately, it's not just Muslims in this country. They're just the ones who are being more vocal about it. There are really evangelical Christians out there, and there are Jewish groups out there who are absolutely against this. I mean, the really ultra-Orthodox ones do not even teach sex education to their children at all. Their children know absolutely nothing, and they don't even teach it to them. And so, obviously, I think there's a letter, I think in the Sunday Times, where, we had this ultra-Orthodox Jewish campaigner who was saying that there are Jewish people who will leave the country if they have to teach their children this. I mean, that is
see you later.
Ridiculous.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Rabbi.
Good luck getting your gay mortgages elsewhere.
Yes, thank you. The bank is closed. All right. Well, there's something I wanted to talk about, and that's somebody I know, I've met, I've had a sort of digital relationship with over the last few years, and that's Andy Ngo, based in America, journalist, happens to be gay, Vietnamese American. He built a reputation for himself by turning up to areas in Portland where he lives and documenting the left-wing lunacy and violence and antagonism that is Antifa, the so-called anti-fascist. And he's been in a few hairy situations with them already, documented it on film. And just recently, this last week or so, he was set upon by a gang of them, 5 or so, punches to the head, things lobbed at him. He was in quite a bad way. The pictures of him were really upsetting to see. And he got taken to hospital, and he's reported that he suffered a brain hemorrhage for it. And it's just been really interesting to see the response from mainstream media, fellow journalists, should I say, and the far left. And it doesn't seem to me like there has been a reasonable level of, I want to say, outrage, discourse, condemnation on this, that they should have been. In fact, it's gone the other way, where people have said, well, he did push their buttons, he did deserve it, he went in there looking for trouble, was one of the things they're saying. He's far right, he votes for Trump, etc. No, I've met Andy.
Is this a bit like saying, well, of course she was going to get raped.
She's asking for it.
She walked out of the house at 7 p.m. What was she thinking? She wore a short skirt, so.
No, I don't agree with Andy on everything politically. I mean, you think he's a Trump voter for a start? We'd have a very long conversation about that.
Well, then he definitely deserves to die.
Yeah, but I met him in America. He's he just seems like a warm, such a soft-spoken, nice young man, and that's just my first impressions of spending a little bit of time with him, only a little bit of time, and we had a chat, and it was quite upsetting to see that. I mean, I don't even know him particularly well, but I just felt quite upset to see that. And what's really annoying me about it is the fact that people on my side of the fence keep pointing out, well, this is an ethnic minority gay man you've beat up here, and their response has been, well, I thought you didn't do identity politics, and that's not what they've missed the point. That's not why.
No, but they do. They do.
They do identity politics. I'm basically saying it's all bullshit, isn't it? It's hypocrisy. I could not give two fucks whether Andy liked what you bum fun. Did you term it before? Whether or not he's Vietnamese, whether or not, I don't care about those things at all. I'm not one of those idiots that says I don't know his colour, I don't know his race. Of course you do. Of course you do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Visual.
I hate it.
I just don't care.
This is a bit of a digression, but I hate it when people say, "Oh, I don't see skin colour. I just see."
Yeah, of course you do.
Well, yeah,
it's all over the face. It's on the face. I mean, you need to get your eyes tested. If you don't see colour, you really need to go and get your eyes tested. It's not.
I mean, if you primarily see someone through their skin colour, that's different.
That's different.
You have to. You have to be.
You're like, good morning, black. Good morning, brown. How are you, beige? That's the problem.
I mean, those can be surnames as well. So if you see a public school headmaster saying that, it's not because they're being racist. It's just because their surname is black.
Yeah, it's affection.
And brown.
Sure. So my point was, why do you guys pretend to care about this when you are celebrating the beating of one unarmed, non-aggressive, non-combative, male, gay minority, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter? So the game's rigged. You've played your hand. You don't really care about these poor, beleaguered minorities that you bang on about incessantly to get the likes and the retweets by fellow white middle-class people. You just like the people who reinforce your warped political opinions and your ideology. You just want your views reflected back on you. You want to believe that you're fighting fascism and Nazism, and people like Andy are a threat. And it's a bit strange as well. I mean, they have a lot of hostility towards him because he exposes their violence. So how do they combat that? By being even more violent to him. So I was just really disappointed to see so many people say variations of, he deserved it, he was asking for it, or they try to discredit his character and his qualifications. He's not a real journalist. He works for a far-right publication, which Quillette is not by any stretch of the imagination. And so it's rigged, isn't it, basically? It doesn't matter if ethnic minorities are getting beat up on the street. Gay ethnic minorities, it doesn't matter if they're getting beat up on the street by masked white men. What matters is what's the political beliefs of that ethnic minority, which is such a fucking farce.
It is. And these anti-fascists, they glorify themselves as freedom fighters while shutting down any debate from the other side. And my issue is that sometimes these groups, I think because they're on the left, they're often described as well-intentioned, but are they really? Now, if they were right-wing, nobody would give them the benefit of the doubt. But whenever it's a left-wing organisation or far left, we always say, but their intentions are good. Why is it that anyone who's on the left is well-intentioned, but anyone who's on the right is immediately a bigot and must never be defended?
Yep, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, isn't it? I think that's where it is.
It is.
All you need to do is reverse ideologies here. Imagine some masked white far-righters kicking the shit out of a gay ethnic minority Corbyn fan or Cortez fan. Some Democrat getting the shit kicked out of them. Can you imagine? Did you see the fucking media storm about one school kid smiling at a Native American? The Covington schoolboys. Did you see the outrage about that? This kid smiled.
It turns out that was... Yeah,
the kid smiled. Whereas on the flip side of the coin, we have somebody who's got the shit kicked out of them to the point where they've got a brain hemorrhage, and people are going, well... kind of brought it on himself. His skirt was too short, essentially. And now they're saying, oh, well, he's doing a media tour of all these right-leaning, media outlets. Well, they're obviously going to reach out to him, aren't they? This is what you've done. You've created a propaganda win for the right. They're so self-righteous and they think they can engage in violence. They don't realise even if they were completely right, let's say everything Antifa believes is correct. It isn't. They're full of shit. Let's say everything they believe about race, the state of the United States, the current levels of fascism, the numbers of Nazis roaming around. Let's say all that's right. Okay, so what's the solution? Street fights, street violence, general antagonism, closing down roads. Well, you need to have a rethink. You need a general meeting about your tactics, because all of that is not going to help the cause. You are selfish, essentially. You just want to have a good time. You just want a selfie to say that you bashed the fash, which the fash on this occasion happens to be one unarmed gay Vietnamese journalist who's one of the most lovely, soft-spoken people I've met. So it's really irritating that even if they are right, they're just helping the far right. The far right are emboldened by their actions because they can say, look how intolerant the left is. Thought we were the thugs. Thought we were the bad guys.
Yeah, exactly. And there's intolerance on, both sides of the political spectrum. But the annoying thing is that those on the left seem to think that they have a monopoly on righteousness when they don't. They really don't.
It's just so scary because it's scary to me how quickly they go to violence. I mean, look, I get called, right, some of these people who have celebrated this attack on Andy Ngo have called me a white supremacist. They've called me a white supremacist who puts Muslims in danger because I say Islam's a bit shit, isn't it? But I also say, but please don't hurt anyone, and especially don't be an anti-Muslim bigot, because that's disgusting also. So there's me with these opinions who's beyond the pale, who's horrible, who's a white supremacist and extremist, etc. Now imagine if I'd have celebrated the beating of a Muslim in the streets. What a horrible, horrible, horrible person that'd make me be. If I vocally endorsed the beating of a Muslim in the street, and my idea was, well, he's he's a conservative Muslim, he hates gays, he probably supports ISIS, all these stupid excuses. Imagine what would happen if I did that. I can imagine even thinking that. Yet they get to think exactly the same things about another ethnic minority of a different stripe, and they think they are virtuous, and that's what scares me. They are drunk on their own self-righteousness, and they are so convinced they're fighting a resurgence of Nazi Germany. It's borderline delusional. They are not Indiana Jones.
Yeah, it's unfortunately that's just the way it is now. I mean, I think politics has just become so
too extreme.
Yeah, it has become so polarised. It's so nasty that I just don't really take much of an interest in it, because everyone just wants to just come out with nasty comments all the time, and there's just no need for it.
What annoys me as well is the way social media has played a part in this. That I think it's made it easier to engage, to the point where I think there's an element, like I know I say, and I still believe this, just ignore it. You don't have to engage. If someone's saying something on Facebook or Twitter that you don't like, get on with your day. If you don't like it, you don't have to be outraged. But there is an element of, well, there are opinions now that are in your peripherals, that are put in your face, that wouldn't have been there 10 years ago. You wouldn't have seen them. You would have gone around your daily routine. You log into Facebook now, and suddenly the girl who dropped out of school who used to eat crayons has got a really, really interesting hot take on the current economical situation regarding Brexit. And you just want to respond with 10 reasons why Vicky hasn't got a clue what she's talking about. And it does take a certain level of self-control not to engage with that. And I think the fact that we constantly having politics thrust in our faces via our digital companions and our social medias now does make the political climate a little bit more ready to bubble over. We all have an opinion now, because kids know who Donald Trump is. And I think that's kids not only know who Donald Trump is, that's not a bad thing, but they have an opinion on his border wall. They have an opinion on, his policy. And I just think that's really, really sad that 6 and 7-year-olds kind of have been saturated with all this political discourse via their parents and via, digital media, to the point where they have to give this sort of thing some sort of consideration. I used to play Conkers. Yeah, exactly. Don't know about you.
I think this is when it's a good time to get off Twitter and just look at some cat videos on YouTube.
That's a good point. But are you a real person if you're not on Twitter? You've got no right. So here's another. I think you're right. So this is entirely an opt-in situation. Social media. If it's not doing anything for you, and if it's stressing you out, and it's making your life miserable, or you're addicted to it, or whatever, log out of it. Do something else. But if you want to be somebody who contributes to the conversation, if you want to be a social commentator or an actor or a comedian,
then you can't just.
Can you
just
afford not to
switch
engage?
off.
Yeah. So
I mean, some people have a policy of not engaging with people on Twitter at all. They'll just post an article or the event details about their event, and that's it.
yeah,
They won't.
I envy Douglas Murray on this. He very rarely, like, to the point where the other day he sent a tweet saying that he's turned 40, and I was like, what the fuck, what's going on, has he been hacked? Because
Yeah,
Douglas Murray
exactly.
very rarely uses Twitter for opinion, or, you know, it's usually there's this event, there's this article, etc. And I think he's a really, but then again, people like him have a public reputation, and they have books to fall back on and all sorts of other things. Like other people who want to start out in this sort of argument and this industry have to engage. They have to have a social media profile. Everything that has happened to me opportunity wise, I would say, has come off the back of my Twitter account, from speaking at events to being invited here and there.
It's the same here. I mean, would you have known who I was if it weren't for social media?
No. So it's worth deleting just for that, really, isn't it?
Fuck you.
Yeah, it's become one of the things that everyone's involved in, and if they're not involved in it, they're talking about. And if they're not talking about social media, they're reporting on it. These social media companies have kind of got a monopoly. That's where it is. They've got a monopoly on the discourse now. Is it really discourse if it's not happening online? That's the question. I mean, you can all sit down in a room and have a conversation, but then that gets filmed and uploaded online. Our entire commentary, our entire discourse, our entire political engagement now is all via social media, and they seem to have us by the balls, and I'm not entirely sure where that leads and whether it's going to produce a net good for the political discourse in the long run.
It'll be interesting to see how it does change. I mean, we do see examples of where authoritarian regimes use social media for their own purposes, so it does have its use.
Talking about Trump again.
Well.
So, just to cool my heels on this rantathon of Taking the Myth this week, there has been an interesting report released by the Muslim Council of Britain on the representation of Muslims in our media. And I believe you've done a little bit of a dig, a little bit of a excavation into this report to find some little tidbits of concern and or entertainment.
I have, yeah. So, what would you say the BBC's Bodyguard drama and Joanna Lumley have in common?
I'm gonna put forward a hard pass on this question here, Ram.
Well, according to the MCB's new report, they've all misrepresented or generalised about or otherwise shown bias towards Muslims and or Islam. So, yes, I know you wouldn't have thought Patsy was that kind of person, but there you go.
Is it because she's always pissed? Is it haram? Is it basically invoking Islamic blasphemy here?
Yeah, basically. So the MCB's new Centre for Media Monitoring, aka the one man that does it, has analysed about 11,000 articles, news clips and TV shows.
Oh, what a boring wanker. He's some fresh air. Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's so mean. Come on. So, apparently, they were saying that, 59% of the content assessed associated Muslims with negative behaviours, and a third misrepresented or generalised about Muslims. So that's a summary of it. So you think, okay, I can see some truth in that. There's some content out there that you think, yeah, that's a misleading headline. But then when you get beyond the summary pages, it just gets a bit ridiculous. So Joanna Lumley did a programme on the...
What the fuck has Joanna Lumley done?
What's Patsy done?
What has she done?
What has she ever done to the MCB? So she did the programme called The Silk Road, and she was in Kyrgyzstan. I think I'm pronouncing
You just made that
correctly.
up. That's not a place.
In Kyrgyzstan, she said, quote unquote, "This is a mainly Muslim country, but its communist legacy gives it a much less Islamic feel."
What? So that's So that's a negative representation and or misrepresentation of
That's
Islam.
a misrepresentation, apparently.
Okay, so they're not only are they picking peanuts out of excrement at this point, but they're claiming to be the ultimate authority on the authentic version of Islam. They are the men. You go and ask them, basically. If you've got a question on Islam, it has to be sanctioned and approved by the MCB. They get to decide out of all the strains of Islam and all the variations in which it's practiced and all the different ways its adherents interpret the text. They're the ones that decide for Britain what is the true Islam.
Yeah. And here's another one that they said was misrepresentation. Kantar Ahmed wrote a piece in The Spectator after Boris Johnson's remarks about the niqab. On that, she said, and she's a Muslim woman, by the way. She's proud to be Muslim.
Is she the one they accused of being an anti-Muslim Islamophobe?
I don't know, but she said in her piece that there's no basis for niqab in Islam, and their argument was actually there are Muslims who wear the niqab, and they feel that Islam does say you have to wear it, so that's misrepresentation. And you just think to yourself, what? I mean, a lot of Muslims themselves don't view the niqab as being part of normative Islam. The vast majority don't think it's Islamic. Members of my own family don't think there's anything Islamic about it. Are they all Islamophobic?
A lot of Islamic countries don't. A lot of people who came from Islamic countries to live in Britain were shocked.
Morocco banned it.
Morocco's banned it. The prevalence of headgear in that respect. May I just ask, though, as well, is there anything in this report that mentions that linking Islam to terrorism is a problem and an issue?
Well, I think there was some issues that they had when they were talking about one of the, I think one of the London Bridge attackers or the...
you see, there's been so many Islamic terror attacks in this country, it's difficult to remember which one.
It's one of the attackers. I don't think it was London Bridge. I think it might have been another one. There was a picture of him that a news organisation used of him on a pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia, and they said this is very negative connotations of Islam, because people are going to look at that picture and think, Saudi Arabia, a person being religious, that's bad, they're potentially terrorists. It's just ludicrous.
This is infuriating. So fuck me, right? The hundreds of hours of TV this I think wanker was how I described it earlier, has watched in order to come to these conclusions, to say this makes Islam look bad. You know what makes Islam look bad? The endless conveyor belt of extremists that seem to be falling out of these communities and mosques, committing acts of terror and blowing themselves up on tubes and driving into people on bridges and detonating themselves at Ariana Grande concerts and various other knife attacks and various... That gives Islam a bad name more than anything. More than Joanna fucking Lumley. Terrorism gives Islam a bad name. Now, we're not putting terrorism on Islam. Islamists deal with that first. Speak honestly about it. Try and eradicate these people from the communities from which they arise. And then maybe we can talk about whether Joanna Lumley is misrepresenting Islam.
Here's a funny one. So, talking of terrorism. So, a Mail headline said that a London mosque was linked to quote-unquote terrorists when they were actually terror suspects. So you've got to think to yourself, right? I mean, they might be slightly pushing it. I mean, these are not they're not distortions to the end of pushing some dodgy agenda. So there was one that really pissed me off. Apparently, having a one-sided view of the hijab. So a news item about women wearing hijab in Iran is, quote, a typical example of an omission of due prominence, providing the subjective opinion of one woman's experience of wearing the hijab without the counterbalancing view of another's preference towards wearing one. It's fucking mandatory to wear one in Iran. You get jailed for not wearing hijab. Of course it's going to be a negative experience, for fuck's sake. I mean, what a ludicrous report. You'd think a report like this would mention actual examples, like, actual dangerous misinformation, where do you remember in 2015 when Katie Hopkins, that vile piece of garbage,
she's part of the Tommy Robinson propaganda machine.
She wrongly suggested that there was an East London family were extremists linked to Al Qaeda, and they were able to fucking sue
they sued the
paper.
shit out of her, didn't they?
Yes,
Good.
they did.
That
I
is
think that's
dangerous.
how she lost her job. So I don't really see that being mentioned, that because that clearly is a case of misinformation and anti-Muslim bias. But fucking Patsy talking about Soviet Kyrgyzstan. I mean, really, for fuck's sake. This report, I'm sorry, but it's just not worth the paper it's been written
Rip
on.
it right now so I can hear it.
It's on a PDF.
Throw it out the window.
So I can't rip.
Smash your shitting computer up. Burn your laptop. Fucking hell. This is what really annoys me about these large Muslim groups.
This is what they're doing. These claims could actually chill a lot of discussion and reporting of serious stories and issues, because they don't even like the fact that talking about these grooming gangs could, even mentioning their Muslim backgrounds, because Islam has nothing to do with it. And you have to say, okay, fine, yeah, Islam doesn't say you should, ply young girls with alcohol and rape them, fine, but for fuck's sake, don't deny their background.
Yeah, it's worrying. These Muslim
this
interest groups are just really counterproductive to any conversation. And it just seems to me like it's a case of, well, there's no blasphemy laws in this country, but how can we promote them anyway? How can we take any criticism or mention of Islam in a negative way off the table? We can't take the heads off anymore, but we can create a chilling effect. We'll call them bigots. We'll call them Islamophobes. Hey, and am I right in thinking that a lot of these media outlets are actually taking this feedback on board now?
I think they have to, especially if they complain to Ipso, and they certainly do. It's just some of the content that they complain about. I think it's just the basic fact is that they just don't want any negative portrayal of Islam whatsoever. So, for example, there was this piece that was in the Jewish Chronicle, and it was talking about Muslim anti-Semitism. So obviously, there's anti-Semitism that comes from the far right in Europe as well.
Yeah,
and that's on the rise.
You know what unites everybody on all political extremes? Anti-Semitism. You find it everywhere. It's lovely. It's a great uniter. Anti-Semitism. We can all get round the hatred of our, the hatred of Jews.
We can all sing Kumbaya against the Jews.
Yeah.
So basically, the article in the Jewish Chronicle said that several reports show that anti-Semitic attacks have risen across Europe, not due to Muslims, but due to rising far-right activity. And it's slightly misleading, this, because a 2018 survey in Europe, a 2018 EU survey, asked people about anti-Semitic harassment, and 30% said it was someone with an extremist Muslim view, and 13% said it was someone with a right-wing view. But yeah, so I'm sorry, but the facts are going against the MCB report here, and this is going to be very bad news for anyone who believes in free speech, and particularly for ex-Muslims or reformist voices, because what about the views that they have? They're obviously not going to be in line with them, and they will complain that, these views aren't representative of Muslims or Islam, blah 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 blah. And obviously, we do need to be vigilant against anti-Muslim bigotry wherever it is, and we need to call it out for what it is, but they should have come at the expense of a free and open discussion and reporting on Islam and Islamism. And this report is just another way of trying to silence debate, and I hope it's not going to be taken seriously. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, just what we were going back to saying before about, tactics being counterproductive. This closing down speech on certain topics is always counterproductive to the, so there's two issues here, like you rightly just mentioned, dissidents, reformists, ex-Muslims who actually want to have the right to talk out critically about their experiences within the Islamic faith. So there's a sensible discussion to be had on Islam. And if we remove the platform or the space to have a sensible discussion on Islam. People who don't give a shit about being called racist and bigot, real racist and bigots, are just going to fill that space anyway with their hatred. And there's going to be no counter narrative, no sensible middle ground to say, hang on, we can talk ideas, but let's consider people, as individuals with rights. And that's what's going to happen. Nothing has ever been improved in any situation anywhere, I don't think, by saying you can't talk about it. And that's what the MCB are doing. They're saying you shouldn't be able to talk about these things. And my answer is no. Is there anything else you wanted to sneak in at all?
Yeah, but I think I'm done.
You're going to off to set your alarm clock to 5 past Gatto.
Yeah, I've got a meeting about my halal gay mortgage.
That is such a progressive mortgage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh. Iram, where can people find you and your work?
Well, Stefan, I run a website called Sedda, that's seddaa.org, and it's a platform for the types of progressive voices of Muslim heritage, which we touched upon earlier.
Just Muslims, is it? Not very diverse, is it, Iram?
Nah, fuck diversity.
It is diverse, actually, because diversity just means fuck white people. So it's probably one of the most diverse websites on the planet.
Actually, Muslims can be white as well, Stephen.
Don't be white Muslim. You'll be telling me they can be ginger next.
Well, some of the most prominent extremists have been Ginga Muslims. But it's full of very progressive-minded people who are not just practicing Muslims, but also not Muslims anymore. But what they have in common is this, championing free speech and challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
So many of them would be against, the ideas of having these community leaders speak for us all. So, yeah.
Against groupthink and proponents of individual liberty, I would say. So I would definitely recommend that to it, and I do. I always recommend that as a source. If you want to get your daily, your Muslimy fix, you want a bit of news about some Islami.
If you don't want something too Muslimy, then it's just the right.
Yeah, just enough. It's kind of not too much Muslimy. And
it's Goldilocks Muslim.
Yeah, a nice snippet of Muslimy, like a pinch lamb.
Just a tat.
A tat. All right, this has been a pleasure as usual.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, thank you, Iram.
Yeah, thank me.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to the Godless Spellchecker podcast. The podcast is a one-man operation produced in my spare time away from my day job, and I love making it for you. If you enjoy what you hear, please consider lending some support. The show is entirely listener supported. I don't sell anything, I don't run ads, and given the alternative and unpopular focus of my content, it's very unlikely to find a sponsor. So there are a number of ways you can support and chip in and help improve the show and give me more time to produce more content. You can become a patron supporter and pledge a monetary amount per month or per episode by visiting patreon.com/gspellchecker. If you can't lend monetary support right now, don't worry, there's other ways you can help the podcast too. You can share it on your various social media networks, or take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to it. Your support is massively appreciated. Thank you. Think we've all learned something here today?